Hello and welcome to the fireside chat that we'll be having here today at FinTech Connect. If you don't know me, then my name is David Brear. I'm the CEO at 11FS and one of the hosts of the podcast FinTech Insider. Today, I have the absolute pleasure to talk to an absolute legend, one of the smartest and nicest guys that I've really come across in the financial services industry, Mr. Ashok Vaswani, who is the Chief Digital Strategy Officer over at Barclays. Ashok, thank you for spending the time with us. It's great to get the chance to talk to you again. How have you been?
Hey, David, great to connect with you. Can I borrow you to introduce me on all my speaking events?
Well, I mean, you've heard me speak to a lot of people. I only say it when it's true, but and we've had some great chats over the years in terms of the industry and all of the changes that we're really sort of seeing in it. But we should probably start this with congratulations. I mean, your role's just changed at Barclays. You're now the Chief Digital Strategy Officer. But tell us a little bit more about what that means, because I mean, in a world where everything is becoming digital, then that sounds like a lot of work to me.
David, it's actually quite fascinating, right? Venkat is our new CEO, and Venkat and I have been talking about this for a while, which basically says, hey, every single business is digitizing and it's on its own path of, how do you go digital? David, you and I have talked a lot about the difference between digitizing a business and building a digital business. And this role really talks to saying, what does a digital bank look like 3 to 5 years down the road? What are the core competencies and how do we deliver across for the group as opposed to each individual kind of segment? So it is at one level something that we just have to get done because it's survival. Two, it is pretty daunting, I must admit, because trying to figure out something that cuts across the entire group. And we do have a very broad waterfront, right from M&A advisory, right down to a normal kind of debit card, and trying to figure out, what does it really mean? What are the core competencies that a bank really has, and how we deliver that in today's day and world is what the remit is all about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sounds very exciting. It's it feels as you were talking there, it's we've seen a lot of organizations. It moves from just being projects. This is not another 4-year horizon transformation piece. This is about capabilities within the organization, isn't it? And as you say, that really sort of cuts across the whole company, doesn't it? It's interesting. I mean, you in your career, you've seen different people in the industry take different views of digital transformation, but it kind of feels like the industry's at a really interesting point of maturity. Is that why really now it feels like the right time to be looking more holistically at the group?
So, David, I think you're spot on. You and I have talked about how 2020, apart from obviously COVID, the medical, the vaccine, will go down as a year of digital inflection. There's no coming back from this, right? And what's become really, really evident to us is that in this new world, we've got to kind of really think about what are the core competencies that can get delivered by a bank, how we do it. And, naturally, it has to be digital. So it's really about what are the core competencies to live and to survive in a digital world. And David, I'm definitely coming knocking at your door to get your thoughts and inputs from you as to how I should be thinking about this.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? When you sort of talk about where people are, and actually you see a lot of headlines, blockchain this, AI that, and all of these different things that kind of get brought up as the sort of panacea for organizations to really solve these things. But I mean, how much do you think though it's a mindset? How much do you think digital is more of a, as we said, a kind of an operating rhythm rather than just a technology? Because I think actually looking at the landscape of banking, we've seen an industry be disrupted really in many senses in terms of what fintech has brought into it. But when you look at the fintech market, the thing I always look at them and learn from is how they execute. It's the culture that they bring to things. Because if you are a Barclays, but you can operate and deploy capabilities like a fintech, that's the best of both worlds, isn't it? So that mindset has to play a big part.
Yeah. So David, you covered a lot of ground in that question. I think there are 3 perspectives that I would have, right? The first perspective is really about, is this all about technology or is this about the culture and the mindset And I can tell you, culture and mindset would eat technology for breakfast, right? It's all about the culture and the mindset. It's about how you think, right? It's about how, because if you change the way you think, then automatically everything else changes. If you don't change the way you think, then spending money on it is you're not going to get the kind of results, right?
Yeah.
So culture and mindset, which then leads to this notion of how do you create digital into the DNA of the organization, right? And if your DNA has to change to be digital, what does that really mean? So this is as much of an HR, learning, attracting of talent, retaining of talent, kind of things that you hire for, things that you promote for. It's a pretty significant kind of change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So culture and mindset, I think, is hugely important. That's perspective number one. Perspective number two, if you really think about it, David, every single company, my view, every single company has become a financial services company to some extent, right? Because if you think about what happened in COVID, there was no physical, there was no physical stores. There were no, everything had to be done. Even if you did it on the phone, or ideally you did it digitally, at the very least you had to take digital payments and sort stuff out like that. From digital payments to digital lending to digital evaluation to digital completion, right? It's like a easy slope to kind of go on.
Yeah.
So if you buy my logic, which then says that every company has to become a financial services company to some extent, and a lot of big companies have shut down stores, right? Microsoft, by the way, said no more stores. They've killed their entire store strategy. I don't know if you saw in the US, CVS has said they're going to shut down 900 stores just last week. Okay. Wow. So, I mean, literally, whether you're on this side of the Atlantic, or out in Asia, this is just happening, right? So if every company is going to become a financial services company, what is the role of a bank, right? If you think about it and you say cryptocurrencies are kind of going up and, kind of taking off, and governments and regulators have started taking notice of it, and CBDCs have become a big deal, already kind of gone in China, the ECB as well as the Bank of England doing consultations. Yeah, the CBDC won't launch in 2022, but they're talking about it in 2025. Now, before that's not it's not a long way away. It's like 1,000 days away, right? And what are the implications of that for the financial services industry and a bank, right? Massive, massive implications. So if every single company regulator is going to become a financial services company, what is the role of a bank? It fundamentally kind of changes. And then if you say that, then you say, so what are the core competencies that we have to develop? And the core competencies that we have to develop, which will take care of our clients and which will take care of our customers. And where is that, right? And if you really come down, there's kernels in there. Now, obviously, I've just been on the job for 2 weeks and I've not got your input as yet. So I'm not going to give you a ready and great answer. But there are kernels that kind of obviously jump out of it, which talk about how do you redefine the role of a bank in this kind of environment, right? So, David, that's where my head is at right now and that's how we are fundamentally thinking about it. And it helps to kind of, take a step away and say, okay, clean sheet of paper, how would you go at it?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and Ashok, the thing that I always get from the conversations that we have, whether they're on something like this or whether they're having a coffee and chatting type thing, is the passion for this change, because actually it's quite easy for this to be quite scary, and actually the big organizations have done very well in a more steady state competitive landscape. But as you described, the market is complex and it's chaotic now. And actually, but with that comes massive opportunities, doesn't it? The ability to serve customers in fundamentally different ways. And as you say, the actual fabric of financial services is shifting. So how do you stay so upbeat about this change? Because it's constant, isn't it?
Yeah. So David, you're right. It is, there are days when I feel, or moments that I feel completely overwhelmed. Where do you even start with this kind of thing, right? There are days when you feel absolute exhilaration because, you kind of, there's an aha moment that just kind of hit and you kind of go. And David, it really comes from constantly interacting with a whole bunch of people, right? You know how often I talk to you, I talk to anybody I can and I say, okay, what do you think? Right? And I try and put some views forward. I pull, kind of thoughts. And, just talking to smart people who are there and thinking about stuff energizes me, right? It really energizes me because, yes, it's scary as hell. It's scary as hell. But it's also a tremendous opportunity, if we get some of this right, we would have plotted the future of this bank into, I don't know, potentially the next 50 to 75 years. That's an incredible, incredible kind of responsibility and great feeling too.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that you touched on there, and let's just sort of go back on it slightly, was COVID. We haven't said the C word yet, but let's sort of dwell on it for a second. But you sort of say that actually within that period, we have seen a lot of disruption. Obviously, there's been huge negatives to people's lives in this sense, in businesses, people, etc. But actually within organizations, as you say, I mean, organizations that have gone from overnight having tens of thousands of people working from home. I mean, how much do you think that momentum for organizations to sort of unblock that point that you made earlier on around culture? It kind of feels like that momentum sort of, well, if we've been able to do this, what else can we do? I really sense that optimism around the industry now for actually, well, how do we take this momentum and take it into the, what are the big things that have really been holding us back? So do you see I guess the industry is at quite an interesting place to really capitalize on the momentum that's been created because COVID's forced change within the industry as well?
David, you're so spot on, right? If you think about it and you say that we used to have at an average 3,000-4,000 people work from home on a everyday kind of basis, maybe a 500 more on a Friday. And in a period of 7 days, we went to 85,000 people working from home. Okay. In a matter of 7 days, right? And frankly, David, at least I didn't hear, maybe you heard, I haven't heard of a single financial institution that failed, could not take care of its customers complained or whatever. Virtually the entire industry flipped, right? And you say, man, it is incredible that the entire industry across the world was able to flip when a gun was put to its head, right? And so how do you kind of make, so the old adage that, if there's a burning platform, you get kind of solutions and drive out of it.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that we cannot allow ourselves to go back to that same level of complacency, right? We've got to say, okay, this allowed us to do something which we would have never, under normal circumstances, if somebody had come and said, prepare a business continuity plan, which takes 85,000 people to work for home, before even the question, it would have taken 3 weeks for the question to be put in an appropriate thing in a PowerPoint deck.
Yeah.
3 weeks minimum. And it would have taken another 3 months to set up a task force to look at it. 3 years later, potentially we would have an answer which would have not worked, right? We got everything done in a week. Yeah. And therefore the question is, how do you frame this as a burning, how do you kind of create that burning platform? How do you get the energy behind it and move?
Yeah.
We cannot lose the lessons from this. Right.
Well, and I think that's fascinating, isn't it? Because for an industry, financial services, right? The regulator doesn't like anybody being risky, and so shouldn't they? But actually, in an industry where, to your point, the companies are just people, and actually the processes, the governance, the culture, the everything that goes with that. Almost seeing that momentum and unlocking that potential is hugely exciting. I think the other thing is in that sense as well, when you look at the industry, the industry is moving from organizations needing to do everything themselves to much broader partnerships in the market. How much do you see partnerships shaping the destiny, not only for you guys, but actually the financial services industry more broadly? Because I know you guys have made some interesting steps in that sense, but I feel like it's not just a big contract and lots of procurement. It's actually, it takes a real level of emotional intelligence to say, look, this organization can do this thing so well that we will partner with them to make that happen. And for me, that's, again, it's a cultural point more than anything else. So, I mean, how do you make those steps, and how important do you think partnerships will be for the future?
See, David, it comes down to actually quite the basics, right? As I think about it, I'm saying the speed of change is so fast, right? And I've been saying this for the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, right? Every year, the speed on the treadmill is going up, and the inclination on the treadmill is getting higher and higher and higher, right? If you thought 2020 was the fastest pace of change you've seen in your career, I promise you it's the slowest speed of change you're going to see in the next decade. Just no doubt. Okay. So now, one thing is for sure, tomorrow I have to run faster and steeper than I ran today. And ditto day after tomorrow, and ditto the day after that. No question about that. My ability to continuously do everything myself across such a broad waterfront soon will be practically impossible. It'll just be impossible, right? And David, if you think about it, it's already starting to happen. How many financial institutions around the world are now saying these parts of the business are not sustainable and we are therefore going to sell them off? Very good businesses, right? I left Citi a long time ago, but I used to be the CEO for Asia Pacific Consumer Bank. It used to be the jewel in the crown at my time. Today, the new CEO comes in and makes a decision that she's going to let go of the Asia Pacific Consumer Bank. I don't know whether it's a good decision, bad decision. Jane is an extremely smart woman. I'm sure it's absolutely the right decision. But it goes to this core point that the ability to invest across such a broad waterfront is virtually impossible. If you're going to do that, you can't do it all by yourself.
Sure.
And therefore, you're in partnerships. Now, in certain cases, you're in partnerships whether you like it or not. Mobile banking is really important. Whose rails am I riding? Apple and Samsung. Is Apple doing Apple Cash? Is Apple doing Apple Pay? Hey, Apple is somebody I'm completely dependent upon. Apple is a competitor. Apple is an outstanding client, right? We do a lot of business for Apple Inc. And by the way, Apple is a great partner of mine in the UK. So my mindset cannot be, right, hey, this is my lunchbox. I'm sharing my lunchbox with David. David has his lunchbox. And the only lunchbox we're going to eat out of is David and mine. David can eat in mine. I can eat in David's. And that's about it. No, it doesn't work. There are a whole bunch of people eating from your lunchbox. You better be eating from somebody else's lunchbox as well. Otherwise, you're going to go really, really hungry.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because to your point around the manufacturing and distribution of financial instruments, I mean, back to your point, the things a financial services organization had to be brilliant at in the past, having lots of data centers, that's not necessary anymore. And actually the partnerships around, it comes back to that point you were making earlier on. And I'm not going to put you on the spot because you're only, 3-4 weeks into this role, but what is that future of being a financial services organization? What does that mean in the future? And actually almost addressing that problem allows you then to unpick, well, if that's what we think we need to be, well, what do we actually have to be good at to get there? Because like you say, data centers used to be something that you have to have and used to have to be brilliant at data integrity and physical security. Now everything's cloud-based. So, in that world of partnerships, that could be base level infrastructure. It could be distribution partners, as you say, with Google or Amazon or Apple or whoever. So it's and that's exciting though. Again, I come back to though. I don't want to keep playing the but the worry. It's like, but actually the flip of that is the organization has to be much more nimble. It has to be much better at partnering with individual organizations who are maybe going to be Apple and Amazon size, but potentially be very small startups in the mix as well. So that change is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. And in fact, David, we've partnered with a lot of fintechs to be able to provide. So the way I think about partnerships, they're partnerships for growth. They're partnerships to drive efficiencies. They're partnerships to drive technology. And then they're partnerships really to drive leverage. And I put it under these four categories. The interesting thing, David, in all of this is that a partner could be a great partner for a certain part of the business, but competing with another part of our group. And how do you think about that, right? And those are the kind of difficult conversations that we have internally. And we say, look, if somebody else is partnering and it's a threat, we got to really weigh this up, because ultimately, if they don't partner with us, they're going to go partner with somebody else. Does that kind of work? So it's absolutely fascinating. I can't say it's 100% science, and the ability to build those kind of relationships and have people you can call upon and say, even if they're much more powerful than you, and say, hey, look, here's how we're going to draw this line. This is how we're going to play it. Let's play it this way. I think it's a fascinating skill.
Yeah, I mean, it feels with partnerships, it's always, with any good partnership, each party is bringing real value to the table, doesn't it? And actually, with a brand like Barclays, you've got a huge amount in the financial services instance to bring to that. And actually, as you say, the manufacturing or distribution side, there is really interesting things to happen. I mean, look, Ashok, I think we could talk for hours about this, and like you say, there's so many different things happening, whether it's regulatory change or technological change or customers excitement or adoption of different things. But which part do you think sort of excites you most about what's happening in the industry now, and your opportunity that you see within obviously this new role within Barclays?
Yeah. So David, it's less about a particular technology, but it's more about how you deliver to your customer or the client, right? And if it really comes down to what you're delivering to customer or client, it's essentially, you can call it different words, but it really is risk management tools, right? Whether it's risk management tools is what you would call it on the IB or the investment banking side of the house, and advice is what you would call it on the consumer side of the house, right? And this ability to deliver the tools, the data, the insights, either providing advice or risk management tools, I think is fascinating. Anything that supports that, any technologies that support that, and those technologies could be artificial intelligence, big data, move to the cloud, blockchain, but where is the areas that you're going to bet, which says ultimately I want to provide great advice / risk management tools to my client. And if we can get that, right, there will always be another 10 technologies, and there's so many smart people. Something new will quantum computing will come along, and something else will come along. Metaverse will come along. I had a fascinating conversation in New York on how we could do mortgages in the metaverse. Can you imagine, David? But the thing really is, what is the client? What are we doing for the client? What are we doing for the customer? And as long as we can do that, the technology follows from that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And as you say, it's what's the customer problem? What's the job to be done? What's the thing that you're really solving for people that actually makes that happen? And that actually, is almost a unspoken about thing in the market right now. With great competition in the market leads to much greater outcomes for customers in terms of that sense. I mean, it's interesting the bits you're touching on there about having spent 6 years in a big bank. The fine line between advice and guidance there's a whole regulatory book there in itself, isn't there, in terms of everything that goes. But as you say, well, what really is the future of financial services? Because actually, we all live in this. Everybody watching this now, we live in this financial services bubble where we love this stuff and we talk about it every day. But the normal people on the street, walking around, are more interested in living their lives than they are engaging with a current account or a savings product or a mortgage or whatever. And actually, the more we focus on solving real people's problems, and actually, what does that mean? As you say, I mean, we live in a world where a Tesla can drive itself with all the algorithm capability that it can. So actually, what does self-driving money really look like? So, and I think it's fascinating. They say, Ashok, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So the idea of that private banker for the mass market being the future of retail banking. I can really see this getting to that point. But in that model, you see financial services sort of moving into the background a little bit, but becoming more important as well.
So, David, that's exactly it. Look, finances are a means to an end rather than an end in itself. Nobody's worried about the finance. They're waiting for the outcome, right? You're looking to buy a plant, you're looking to hedge, you're looking to buy a home, you need to pay medical expenses. So there's no question. There's no question that finances is a means to an end rather than an end in itself. It also means the speed of delivery of financial services becomes critical. As it becomes easier and easier to do other things, finance can't be the thing that holds it up, right? And what necessarily has to happen is, are we giving the right call to the customer, or at least allowing the customer or the client to say, these are the right kind, have you thought about these kind of perspectives? Under these kind of perspectives, this is the kind of decision I would make. And that's why I keep coming back to this notion of advice slash risk management tools has to be the core of what we deliver, obviously digitally.
Well, I mean, we're coming to the end of our time that we've got to chat. I mean, the thing I probably want to leave off with, I mean, is there anything that surprises you now? I mean, obviously, the pace of change has, as you say, has got bigger and bigger and greater and greater. But your time at Barclays, your time at Citi, I mean, financial services over the period that you've been in it, from a market, from a competitive, from a technological perspective, has really changed dramatically, hasn't it? In terms of what it, as you say, what it means to be a financial services player and what their customers really expect from you. Is there ever a kind of a surprise in that sense, or do you really just see, as you say, that it's just the acceleration of change within the market?
No, David, I've always recognized that it's changing very fast. But honestly, the speed at which this thing is changing is astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing, right? And, all the players in the industry, be it the regulators, be it the end client, be it the banks, be it the intermediaries, if we don't wake up to this and start seeing a common future, it could lead to a lot of disruption. Which really boggles the mind. And sometimes I get up in the middle of the night, oh my God, what the hell is going on here?
Well, that's amazing. I mean, if it's not a little bit scary, it's probably not worth doing, is it?
Exactly.
And on that note, we're probably running out of time. So Ashok, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you making the time. And again, congratulations on that new role. Really looking forward to seeing the what really transpires in the industry over the next couple of years. And I'm sure you guys are going to be absolutely at the front of it. So that has to wrap up our time now. So maybe Ashok, where can people learn a little bit more about you and all of the great stuff that you guys are doing at Barclays?
Just follow Barclays, right? Follow Barclays on LinkedIn, follow Barclays on Facebook. Reach out to me. I'm very happy to chat, as you know, David. And thank you ever so much, David, for all your support and your friendship over the years.
No problem at all. It's great to see you keep succeeding and great to see Barclays doing so well. Thank you very much for everybody for listening today. That's all the time we've got for you, but we will be no doubt back into everything else that's going on within FinTech Connect. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.